I was sitting at the kitchen table with Evan, trying to help him patch a K-nex spaceship wing back together when the mail came in with something that caught my eye. It was a thick envelope, heavier than most, and for once my name was spelled right on the front. The return address was my mother's place in Lakewood. Inside, a wedding invitation. My younger brother Derek was getting married. I had not heard a word from him since last Thanksgiving, almost a full year of silence. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. I remembered when my mom, Patricia, made it clear that the event would be family only and that we were not included. And yet, here I was, holding this shiny card trimmed in gold, inviting me to celebrate Derek's big day with Jessica. Jessica was the picture-perfect type, blonde, flawless teeth, worked in finance, and carried that polished, magazine-ready smile. I doubted she'd ever bought anything from a clearance rack. Jessica was exactly the kind of woman my mother always paraded in front of me, a reminder of what I could have had if I had only made better choices. In other words, not Evan's mom, the woman who walked out when he was just 2 years old. I am 34 now. My name's Matt, and I am raising Evan by myself. He is 6 these days, and when he saw the invitation, his whole face lit up. "Does this mean Uncle Derek wants us there? With everyone else?" he asked. I told him yes. Truth is, I even let myself believe maybe this was a sign things were changing, that we might finally be welcomed back. That hope lasted all of 3 minutes, right up until I called my mom. "So," I said, "we got the invite. Did not expect that." She gave this little hum before explaining. It was Jessica's idea. She thought it would be classy. "Should I confirm for the two of us?" I asked. There was a pause, longer than it needed to be. "Sure, just, do not expect a big fuss. You are not in the wedding party, obviously." Obviously. I picked up a suit for Evan off the clearance rack at Target. Navy blue, a little big on him, but he loved the way it looked. He said he felt like a businessman astronaut. I rented a blazer for myself and dusted off a pair of dress shoes I had not worn in at least 3 years. I kept telling myself we would just go, be polite, keep to the background. Maybe this was just a handshake. Quiet, maybe even forced, but still a gesture. Jessica was the exact type of woman Patricia always said I should have been chasing. Jessica was the kind of person you post about online. Her nails matched her clutch, her whole look coordinated like a showroom display. I bet she knew which fork went with salmon, but Evan did not care about any of that. "Will we sit with everybody?" he asked. "Maybe," I said. "Will they clap when we walk in?" he asked, his eyes wide. I chuckled. "I doubt it, buddy." Still, he could not wipe the smile off his face, and I let him hold on to that. We packed a bag, booked a cheap motel in Thornton near the venue, and got ready. I bought him new socks and a clip-on tie. I even ironed my shirt with a towel under it, using the hotel iron that smelled faintly like burnt toast. On the drive over that morning, Evan sat in the back seat, rehearsing the line, "Congratulations on your wedding," like he was practicing for a school play. Pulling into the parking lot, I noticed the shiny cars, the valet guys with earpieces, and I thought to myself, just smile. Keep your head down. Make this easy. We got out of the car, Evan straightened his tie and grabbed my hand. "You ready?" I asked. He nodded quickly. "Are you?" I was not, but I told him, "Yeah." Walking into the reception hall felt like taking a punch to the chest. The air smelled like roses, expensive wine, and perfumes that cost more than my paycheck. The room looked like it had been copied straight out of one of those wedding shows Evan's mom used to binge. High ceilings, rustic beams, huge windows that opened onto hills covered in grapevines. Candles flickered against crystal glasses and gold silverware. Everything screamed money. Evan's grip on my hand tightened as he stared up at the chandelier, glass orbs hanging like frozen fireworks. "Looks like a spaceship," he whispered. "Fancy spaceship," I said, nodding. We stepped in further. People were still moving around, finding their seats, chatting. A string quartet played something that sounded like background music for a toothpaste commercial. Jessica stood near the head table in lace and sparkle, laughing with one of her bridesmaids. She looked like she had been built from a Pinterest board. Perfect hair, flawless dress. She turned, spotted us, and her face tightened for a split second before she forced out a smile and gave me the stiffest nod I had ever seen. Before I could react, Evan slipped his hand out of mine and marched straight up to her. "You look like a princess," he said. dead serious. Jessica blinked, caught off guard. Well, thank you. And then she turned away. Evan walked back to me, grinning like he had just met a celebrity. Not long after, Derek made his way over. Tuxedo sharp, posture straight, his eyes flickering like he wanted to look at me but could not bring himself to do it. He bent down to Evan first. Hey, little man, you look sharp, he said, giving him a one-armed hug. Evan's face lit up. Thanks. Derek straightened up, gave me a single nod, his eyes fixed somewhere over my shoulder, and then walked away. No hug, no good to see you, nothing. Before I even had time to feel the sting, an usher appeared. Young guy with a clipboard. Name? He asked. Matt, I said. Evan and I trailed behind the usher as he studied his chart. He tapped the page and said, Table 16, right over this way. We walked past rows of tables dressed to the nines, full of laughing relatives, cousins, friends, and coworkers. The whole crowd. At table 5, I spotted my aunt and uncle. At table 9, Derek's college buddies. We kept moving until the very back corner, tucked behind a row of oversized potted plants pressed almost against the wall. There it was, table 16, sitting right beside the kitchen doors. Every few seconds, waiters swung through with trays clattering, the smell of food chasing after them. Evan didn't notice. He was still staring up at the chandelier. I bet it opens up and shoots beams of light, he whispered. I forced a grin. Maybe after cake, I said, pulling out his chair. The cushion slid on the slick floor, and he nearly tipped backward before I caught him. We sat. I let my eyes sweep the room. Table after table glowed under warm lighting, smiling faces, champagne glasses raised high. Us? We were tucked in the shadows. A couple we didn't recognize joined our table, probably Jessica's side, late 30s maybe. They gave us the kind of polite smile you give strangers and then turned back to each other. No introductions, nothing. That was when I saw my mother. Patricia glided past table 9, wine glass in hand, leaning over someone's shoulder and laughing loud enough for half the room to hear. She wore a pale lavender dress with rhinestones sparkling along the sleeves, like she was trying out for a Real Housewives reunion. She didn't even glance at us. Not once. Instead, she made her way straight to Jessica, kissed her cheek, and announced loud enough for me to hear from across the room, "My new daughter looks absolutely perfect." Jessica giggled and leaned into her like they'd been friends forever. Evan tugged at my sleeve. "Is Grandma going to sit with us?" he asked. I cleared my throat. "No, bud. She's got a seat up front." He nodded slowly, still trying to wrap his head around it. The string quartet wrapped up, and a woman in a headset stepped to the microphone to announce the wedding party. The room filled with clapping as bridesmaids entered, then the groomsmen. Derek and Jessica came last, hand in hand, all smiles, like something from a glossy magazine cover. They took their spots at the head table under a spotlight, roses piled around them like clouds. From our spot behind a ficus tree, we were barely visible. Dinner came next. Servers moved in waves, setting down plates so perfect they looked staged. Fish fillets, some creamy risotto, asparagus twisted into neat spirals. Our food matched what everyone else got, but by the time it reached table 16, it was lukewarm. Evan didn't care. He was wide-eyed, whispering about the music, the lighting, the way the servers carried towels over their arms. For a moment, I let myself relax. Maybe we'd just sit here, eat, clap at the right times, and make it through. Then the lights dimmed slightly, and the MC announced it was time for toasts. I sat up straighter. Evan clapped. My eyes drifted to the head table. Jessica rose from her chair, smoothed the front of her dress, and took the microphone. I told myself it would be harmless. Just lighthearted stories, safe jokes, nothing that mattered. I should have known better. She stood there, mic in one hand, champagne glass in the other, glancing toward the sound booth like she was waiting for a signal. The lights softened again. She smiled as if she had been rehearsing for this all her life. The chatter faded into that careful silence, half laughs still lingering, glasses clinking softly, but everyone ready to applaud at the right moment. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, her voice sweet and polished like she had practiced. "Truly, from the bottom of my heart, it means the world that you are here to celebrate this new chapter with Derek and me." Her side of the room clapped first. Her parents looked ready to burst with pride. She went on in a steady rhythm, talking about how she met Derek, how their paths crossed at exactly the right time, how God had a plan for their love story. I glanced at Evan. He was halfway through his bread roll, rocking gently in his chair like he was being sung to sleep. I leaned back, thinking maybe I had been too tense. Maybe this really would just be harmless. Then her tone shifted, subtle but sharp enough for me to feel it. And of course, she said, pausing just long enough for effect, I have to thank my future brother-in-law, Matthew. My stomach tightened. Nobody calls me Matthew except people trying to sound proper. I'm Matt to everyone who knows me. I looked at her. That smile she wore wasn't warm. It was measured, deliberate. I knew that smile. I had seen it on my mother too many times. He's really shown us all how strong single fathers can be, she said, pausing so the next words would land harder, doing it all alone after being left behind by anyone else willing to stick around. Laughter rippled through the room. The laughter hit hard and fast, big, sharp, and loud. Not the kind people give just to be polite. This was real amusement. A couple of guests even clapped. Wine glasses tapped together across the room. Someone up front let out a whistle. I stayed still. No laugh, no smile, no blink. Evan tugged on my blazer, his voice small. Why did she say that? His brow was furrowed, like he thought maybe he had done something wrong. I had no answer. My throat felt dry. My chest was locked up tight. Then came my mother's voice, cutting through the room like a spotlight. Too loud, too rehearsed. Well, at least he finally dressed up, she called, swirling her wine glass in lazy circles. Doesn't look like he just rolled off a shift at the auto shop. That drew another wave of laughter. Not quite as loud as before, but enough. Enough to sting worse because it came in layers, snickers, chuckles, little pockets of amusement that seemed to say it was all fair game. I dropped my eyes to the tablecloth, off-white with faint vine patterns. Right near my plate was a smear of butter, and I couldn't stop staring at it. Evan looked at me, his shoulders tense, lips pressed together, fighting a question he didn't know how to form. Around us, life went on. Guests went back to their meals, to their wine, to their chatter. Jessica handed off the microphone and slipped back into her seat like nothing had happened, like it was just another clever toast. But I felt the heat rise in my neck, in my ears, in my chest. This wasn't embarrassment. It was something heavier. Shame. Maybe. Anger mixed with the knowledge that nothing I could say would matter to this crowd. Evan reached for his water and knocked it over. Just a splash, but enough to make him flinch. Sorry, he whispered. I shook my head. It's okay, bud. He turned back to the chandelier, like he needed something bright to hold on to. I sat frozen while the room clapped again for the next speaker. My mother's laugh cut across the tables one more time, thinner now, forced, but still loud. She tilted her head back, swirling her glass like she was some kind of royalty. And I knew exactly what was happening. It wasn't just a joke. It was Patricia stamping her seal of approval on the insult, her way of telling the whole family that I was still the chosen target, still the failure. Jessica was only putting the ribbon on it. I clenched my jaw, fists hidden under the table, rehearsing in my head the confrontations I had played out 100 times before, standing up, calling them out, maybe even flipping a table. But when the real moment came, I stayed pinned to my chair. More glasses clinked. More forks scraped across plates. Someone asked for more wine. The night moved forward, as if nothing had happened. But something had. I felt it under my skin. Evan hadn't lifted his fork in minutes. The waitress came by to clear plates, gave us a polite smile without meeting our eyes. Maybe she hadn't heard the speech. Maybe she didn't realize she was wiping shame off our table right along with the dishes. Across the room, I caught my mother leaning in close to Jessica, whispering something that made her laugh again. That smug little laugh people use when they know they've won. I tried to swallow, but I couldn't. My chest felt heavy, my breath stuck halfway. I scanned the tables. No one was looking my way. My Uncle Robert, just a short distance away, dabbed his mouth with a napkin and kept chewing. My cousin Maya's face glowed blue from her phone screen, probably already spreading Jessica's words in a text thread. And my grandfather, the man who once taught me how to ride a bike, the one who told me never to let people knock me down just because they were louder, kept his eyes fixed on his plate, never lifting his head. Not once. Beside me, Evan sat with his hands folded tight in his lap, eyes on his empty glass, his mouth a thin, pale line. No more spaceship jokes, no more whispering about lights or music. just silence. And that silence broke something in me. I shoved my chair back. The scrape of wood on the floor echoed, loud enough to turn a few heads, but not enough to stop the forks or the chatter. I didn't throw a fit. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just stood, reached for Evan's hand, leaned in close, and whispered, "Let's go." But before the words left my mouth, I heard it. Behind me, I heard the scrape of another chair. Derek. He was standing. Slow. Deliberate. The sound of wood dragging against polished floorboards was louder than anything else in the room. He wasn't looking at Jessica. He wasn't looking at Patricia. His eyes were locked straight on me. His jaw clenched, shoulders squared, gaze sharp. He looked furious. I froze in place. Evan glanced up at him too, confused, his little fingers wrapping tighter around mine. That was when the room felt it. The chatter dropped away. The air got heavier, colder. Even a waiter walking by with a tray full of glasses stopped in his tracks. Derek said nothing at first. He just stared at me like he was sorting through a decision on the spot. Then he turned slowly and looked over the crowd. And without asking, without explaining, he reached out and took the microphone. Just pulled it from the stand. Jessica's eyes went wide. Her mouth parted like she was about to stop him, maybe ask what he thought he was doing. No words came out. Patricia's face twisted, her skin changing color under the makeup. She looked like she had bitten into a lemon. Derek lifted the microphone. The whole place went silent. Rows of people froze, champagne glasses hovering midair. "I'm not letting that slide," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air anyway. "That wasn't a joke," he went on, staring across the tables. "That was cruelty." Jessica sat motionless, hands folded in her lap, her earlier smile gone, just blank. Patricia shook her head hard, already protesting in silence. But Derek didn't stop. Matt raised his boy on his own, worked multiple jobs at once to make sure Evan never went without. He stood tall while most of you sat back, judging, never lifting a finger to help. His eyes shifted toward table 6, toward Robert, toward Grandpa. He took the jobs nobody else wanted. He showed up when no one else did. And today he brought his son here with respect, which is more than I can say for some of you. A murmur rippled through the tables. Shock. Quiet disbelief. Then he turned to Jessica. "You mocked the only decent man in this room who never asked for attention, who never asked for anything, and you did it just to get a laugh." Someone at the bar gasped. A bridesmaid dropped her napkin. "Derek," Jessica whispered, finally finding one word. But he turned his back on her, cutting her off cold. He faced the room again, microphone still raised. "If this is what family is," he said, voice steady as stone, "then I don't want it." And then he walked. Not fast, not storming, just calm, steady steps straight down the aisle through rows of stunned faces out the door. He left without his tux jacket. No goodbye, no glance back. Jessica sat frozen, clutching the microphone like it was glued to her hands, unsure if she should set it down or pretend the night could still be saved. Patricia's face was bright red now, her mouth open like she was about to spit nails. Evan was staring after Derek like he had just watched somebody defuse a live bomb. I stood there, not sure what to do, while the whole room held still. Nobody clapped. Nobody rose. Nobody spoke. The silence was different this time. Not that fake, polite hush. This was real, dead still. I reached for Evan's shoulders, straightening his blazer. He looked up at me, eyes wide, no smile left in him. I didn't sit back down, and nobody else moved either. Evan kept staring at the door Derek had disappeared through, and I stayed standing beside him, hand on his shoulder, braced for something else to explode. But nothing came. Not right away. The party felt like it had smashed into a wall. Jessica still had the microphone clutched tight, her knuckles white around it. She didn't move, didn't speak. Just froze, like somebody forgot to tell her the next line. The DJ hovered by his laptop, unsure whether to play music or shut the whole thing down and slip out the back door. Then Patricia stood up. Quick, sharp, determined. She opened her mouth and let out a voice that sliced the air in two. "Derek!" she screamed, like he might still be listening. "Get back here!" People flinched at the sound. That was Patricia's voice at full force, piercing, polished, and angry. But Derek didn't come back. The door stayed closed. She stood there, fuming, tugging at the strap of her dress like straightening fabric might straighten the wreck. "Well," my mother said, throwing a quick glance at Jessica like they had rehearsed some kind of backup plan. "Clearly he's upset, but this is not the time for drama." The room stayed quiet. No clapping, no support, just her voice hanging in the air. She hesitated, then turned her gaze toward me. That was when her eyes landed on Evan. For a moment, her face twitched, like she'd forgotten he was even sitting there. Honestly, she said, voice sharp and raised, you embarrassed her, Matt. You always ruin things. That was it. That was the moment. Not Jessica's jab, not the laughter, not all the years of being shoved aside and blamed for every wrong turn. Evan flinched when she said it, and I saw something inside him crack, like he suddenly understood this wasn't just about me. It was about him too. I stepped in front of his chair. You don't get to twist this, I said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Her eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? No, I said, firmer now. You don't get to act like you didn't enjoy every second of her little joke. Jessica was still frozen, still gripping that microphone like she was waiting for a cue. You didn't stop her, I said, pointing straight at my mother. You laughed. You made it worse. And the rest of you. I swept my eyes across the tables. You just sat there. No one looked back. Even the ones who probably agreed with Derek kept their eyes down. Chairs shifted, silverware clinked, but not a word. I looked back at Patricia. Her jaw was tight. Her hand shook just enough to make the wine glass tremble. You think I ruined things? You cut me out years ago. All I did was show up. All I did was bring my kid to his uncle's wedding and sit at the table you shoved in the shadows. You made damn sure we were invisible. She tried to speak, but I wasn't done. You let Jessica humiliate me in front of my son. You let her take a shot at me being left behind, like Evan's some mistake the family just has to tolerate. And now you've got the nerve to say I ruined this? Finally, Jessica stirred. Her eyes widened, and she realized the microphone was still in her hand. I didn't mean it like that, she said, voice shaky. It was supposed to be funny. I stared at her. She looked perfect in her lace gown, makeup flawless, hair pinned to perfection. But all of that couldn't hide the emptiness in her voice. You don't get to joke about people you don't even know, I said. You don't get to stand up there and humiliate someone who already knows damn well he's not wanted. Not for a cheap laugh. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She had nothing left to say, and for once, she didn't try to fake it. I turned to Evan. He was looking up at me, waiting. Eyes wide, searching for a move. I gave him a nod. Come on, bud, we're done here. But before we could leave, a chair scraped near the middle of the room. An older man stood. My grandfather. He rose slowly, steadying himself with both hands, adjusting his belt, smoothing the front of his jacket. His fingers shook just enough to notice. His eyes found mine. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd speak up. Maybe he'd say something final. An apology, a defense. But he didn't. He only gave me a small nod, almost too small to believe. Then he lowered himself back down. Maybe that was all he had left in him. Maybe it was more than I should have expected. Either way, it was enough. Not clean, not satisfying, but enough. I turned toward the exit. Evan stood with me, his little shoes tapping across the floor. The room stayed hushed. Not whispers, not chatter, just stunned silence broken only by the clink of a stray wine glass. No music, no applause. We passed table 6. My uncle wouldn't meet my eyes. We passed the bridesmaids, one of them wiping at her cheek like she might cry. Patricia stayed standing, frozen, furious. But her voice didn't follow me this time. The same voice that once filled every room, controlled every second. It didn't work anymore. We reached the door. Evan looked up at me. I opened it for him, and we stepped through. The main doors shut behind us, and the air changed instantly. Heavier, cooler. The fake warmth of the reception vanished the second we left. It felt like somebody yanked the cord on the whole illusion the party had been running on. But I didn't walk away just yet. I stopped right outside the doors. Evan stood beside me, peering through the glass like he was waiting for something, maybe for Derek to come back, maybe for some reason to make sense of what we just lived through. He didn't ask me anything. He just stood there, still as stone. Through the tall windows, the inside looked frozen in place. Nobody had moved. The DJ hadn't dared play another song. The wedding cake sat untouched on its pedestal, decorations perfect but useless. Waiters lingered near the walls, unsure if they were supposed to start clearing dishes or just call it a night. Guests stayed stiff in their seats, faces blank, some tilting their heads just enough to avoid making eye contact with anyone else. From where I stood, I could almost hear the building's vents humming louder than the people. Jessica was still planted at the head table, back ramrod straight, her hands folded neatly in her lap like a school kid who just got caught cheating in front of everyone. Her cheeks were drained of color. She didn't even blink. Her bridesmaids were scattered around in their matching dresses. Not one of them reached for a phone or tried to fix lipstick. No whispered jokes, no giggles. They just stared down at the floor like they were hoping it would swallow them whole. Patricia finally stood. She pulled her shawl tight around her shoulders, like she needed armor now that her perfect plan had collapsed. Derek is ungrateful, she said loud enough to slice through the silence. After everything we've done for him, this is how he repays us? A few heads turned, but not with sympathy, just blank stares. No nods, no chuckles, no applause. Her eyes swept the room, searching for backup. None came. Then she spotted me through the glass and pointed. "This is your fault, Matt. You embarrassed her. You always ruin things." That voice I grew up with, the one that used to fill a house and snap your spine in one sentence, didn't carry like it once did. Nobody reacted. Not one person defended her. Even Jessica's family kept their heads down, fiddling with forks, wishing they were elsewhere. And just like that, Patricia's power broke. Her shoulders sagged. The mask slipped. For a moment, she didn't look polished or sharp, just old, grasping for control she no longer had. I didn't speak. Not to her, not to anyone. I looked at Evan. His face was calm, but his voice was quiet. "Can we go?" I nodded. "Yeah, bud. Let's go home." He didn't wait for me to repeat it. We turned from the glass and headed for the car. My rented Blazer felt heavy, like it carried every ounce of what had happened inside. The night air was cool. Wind rustled through the vineyard trees as if reminding me the world was moving forward, with or without them. Evan climbed into the back seat, buckled in without a word. I slid behind the wheel, checked the mirror. His clip-on tie sat crooked, my own collar damp with sweat. I started the car, and we drove off like we were leaving a fire still smoldering behind us. In the car, Evan finally spoke. Uncle Derek was mad. "Yeah," I said, eyes on the road. He was. He looked out the window, then back at me. "But not at us." "No," I said, "not at us." Silence filled the car, but it was clean, not awkward, the kind that comes after you shut a door for good. We passed the hills, the cars, the glowing white tents still lit up like nothing had gone wrong, but we knew better. The whole show had collapsed mid-performance. Back at the motel, I let Evan shower first. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dead TV, fists clenched before I even realized it. I had to shake them out like I'd just come out of a fight. Evan patted out in a towel, hair damp, pajamas halfway on. He crawled into bed and pulled the covers up with practiced ease. I washed my face, changed, and lay down beside him. The light stayed on. He rolled toward me. "Will we still see Uncle Derek again?" I looked at him. "Yeah, I think we will." That was enough for him. He shut his eyes and was asleep in a minute. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. Not angry, not sad, just awake. And one thought kept circling. They all saw it. Every single one of them saw who Patricia really was, who Jessica was, who I was. And for once, nobody laughed, nobody clapped, nobody brushed it off. They saw, and that was more than I'd ever gotten. I woke before the alarm, eyes still on the ceiling while the motel's air conditioner hummed like it was trying to drown me out. Evan was curled on his side, breathing steady. His little tie sat on the nightstand like evidence. I picked up my phone, 17 missed calls, one from Patricia. The rest of the calls were from unknown numbers or relatives I hadn't heard from in years. A few left voicemails, but I didn't listen. I didn't need to hear excuses or speeches about how she didn't mean it. There were texts too, mostly from people I barely knew. One said, "Hey, that was long overdue. You handled it well." Another just read, "He spoke for all of us." Then came a link. No message, no subject, just a TikTok. Someone at the reception had filmed Derek's speech on their phone. The clip showed everything: Derek in his tux, Jessica's frozen face, Patricia's sour reaction. Caption at the bottom read, "Groom calls out his own family at wedding. Wait for it." I didn't want to watch, but I did. 2 minutes long. I watched it all sitting in the dim motel light while Evan breathed steady beside me. 50,000 views overnight. 90 by noon. Over 100,000 by the time we got home. I didn't repost or comment, but I read the replies. That man is a hero. Respect to the single dads. This healed something in me. Groom of the year. One hit me hardest. Who raised that guy? Not his mom, clearly. I read it twice. I didn't smile, didn't cry, but something inside loosened, like a knot I hadn't realized was there, finally gave a little. On the drive back, we stopped at a diner, corner booth. Same clothes as the night before. The waitress didn't ask questions, just gave Evan pancakes and filled my coffee cup without a word. Sunlight cut through the blinds, and I realized how steady Evan looked, like he'd already filed everything away as a lesson learned. At home, I dropped our bag by the door and sat on the couch for what felt like hours. No TV, no phone, just letting the weight of it all settle. Evan stayed in his room most of the day, quiet but thoughtful. That night, while I rinsed dishes, he came out with a piece of paper. Look, he said, holding it up. A drawing, 3 stick figures. One tall, one medium, one small. The tall one held a blue crayon microphone. The small one smiled wide. The medium one had spiky hair, me the way he always drew me as a superhero. This is you. This is me. And that's Uncle Derek, when he said the thing. I stared longer than I meant to. Then I grabbed a magnet and pinned it in the center of the fridge. Evan grinned and walked back to his room. I stood there, staring at that drawing. It didn't erase what Patricia said, didn't fix years of being kept out, the missed birthdays and holidays, but it was something. Not applause, not forgiveness, just something real, the kind you don't need a crowd for. Later, when Evan was asleep, I went back into the kitchen. The drawing was still there, edges wrinkled from his small hands, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. I was already home. The video kept spreading, hundreds of thousands of views, then millions. Parenting pages, mental health blogs, even a teacher from Michigan posting, "This is what accountability looks like." Jessica tried to spin it. Next day, she posted a photo holding a coffee mug that said grace, captioned, "Sometimes people say things they regret. We learn, we grow, we forgive." She locked the comments by afternoon. A few days later, she tried again, went live on Instagram from her spotless couch, voice soft like a yoga teacher. She said the whole thing was a misunderstanding, that Derek overreacted, that weddings are emotional for everyone. Nobody bought it, not even her bridesmaids. Within 2 weeks, every picture of her and Derek was gone. Engagement post wiped, registry link dead. Even their hashtag, Derek and Jessica Ever After, pulled up nothing but jokes and memes. No public statement, no polished apology, just silence, like the whole thing got erased from the internet. Then Patricia called. Her name flashed on my phone while I was unloading boxes at the warehouse dock. For a moment, I almost let it ring out, but I answered. She skipped hello. "Do you realize how bad you made me look?" Her voice was clipped, sharp, not an ounce of regret in it. "You let that happen," she said. "You just stood there. You let her get humiliated in front of everyone. Do you think that's what a good brother does?" I didn't yell back, didn't match her tone. I just let her run until she was out of steam. When she finally stopped, I said, "I'm not your punching bag anymore." Then I hung up. No speech, no explanation, just ended it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. Not even a flicker of the old weight. It felt like shrugging off a jacket I hadn't realized was 3 sizes too small. Life didn't suddenly change after that. Same bills, same shifts, nights at the warehouse, days spent making deliveries in my beat-up Honda, still clipping coupons for Evan's school supplies. But something in me shifted, the way I carried myself around people who used to look down on me. And Evan noticed. He started asking different questions, braver ones. Why didn't Grandma ever come to my birthday? Why does Uncle Derek say sorry when nobody else does? Why don't more adults stop mean people? I didn't always have clean answers, but I gave him honest ones. And instead of looking scared or shutting down, he listened. He asked more. One afternoon, he came home with messy hair and a dirty shirt. I thought he'd gotten into trouble. Turned out a boy was picking on a girl for wearing the same shoes every day. Evan stood up and told him to quit, loud enough the teacher heard. When I asked why, he just shrugged, like Uncle Derek did. Like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I turned away and wiped my face before he could see. That night, I drove him to a late dentist appointment. While he was inside, I checked my phone. A text from a number I didn't know at first. "Let's catch up soon. I owe you more than a speech." It took me a second to realize it was Derek. I wrote back, "What do you mean?" A minute later, he replied, "There's stuff you don't know. Stuff you deserve to know. I didn't press, didn't flood him with questions. Derek was never the heart on his sleeve type. We didn't grow up talking about feelings. We grew up under Patricia, where silence was safer than honesty. So when he said he owed me more, I believed him. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It felt like the first tap on a wall that had stood between us since we were kids. I didn't reply again. I just sat there in the car, listening to Evan's laugh drift from the dentist's waiting room as he watched cartoons. I figured Derek would come when he was ready. I didn't need a parade or a perfect apology. The wall had cracked. That was enough. The next weeks passed with nothing from Jessica. No calls, no texts, no half-fake apologies. Not even one of her tone-policing messages she liked to send to clear her name without admitting blame. Nothing. Same with her family, her parents, her sister, her cousins. Gone quiet like somebody shut off a faucet. And honestly, that silence was better than any noise they ever made. For once, my phone wasn't buzzing with backhanded invitations or fake holiday greetings. For once, it was just quiet, and in that quiet, things could finally breathe. One morning, I stepped onto the porch to grab the mail. The air was cool, clouds still streaking the sky. In the box, water bill, supermarket flyer, a letter from Evan's school, and one small envelope. No name, no return address, just cream-colored cardstock with my street number on it. Looked like something you'd get with a gift basket. Inside was a single card. Heavy paper, no design, no greeting, just 4 words in blue ink written in block letters. To the wolf. No signature. I stood there with it flapping in the wind for a long minute. Didn't need to guess, didn't need to ask. It was Derek. His words from the wedding. Proof enough. I slid the card into my jacket pocket and went back inside. Later that week, Evan's school held their end-of-semester assembly. One of those midday things where folding chairs creak, parents shuffle in late, and somebody's toddler cries in the back. I sat near the rear, paper cup of coffee in hand, trying to look relaxed even though my chest was tight. Then they called his name for most thoughtful student. He walked up slow but steady, brown shoes scuffed at the toes, still wearing the same clip-on tie from the wedding, snug against his collar. The principal handed him a certificate, then bent down to ask if he wanted to say anything. Most kids would have shaken their heads and bolted. Evan took the microphone. Just a few words. Clear. Simple. My dad's the strongest guy I know. That was it. No build-up. No hesitation. He said it like it was the most obvious fact in the world, then walked off the stage. I clapped the hardest, not out of pride, not even out of sentiment, but because it was true, and because those few words carried more weight than anything Patricia ever stuffed into her Christmas letters. That night, after dinner and homework and a quick Nerf war in the living room, I was putting Evan to bed when my phone lit up. Derek. Second call since the wedding. I let it go. Not because I was avoiding him, but because Evan was mid-sentence about a robot he'd seen in a school library book, and I wasn't cutting him off for anyone. Later, when he was asleep, I played the voicemail. Derek's voice was calm, lower than usual, a touch nervous. "Let's meet this weekend," he said. "I'll bring someone with me. He's been waiting a long time." That was all. I listened twice, sitting in the dark living room, fridge humming in the kitchen, Evan breathing soft down the hall. I knew exactly what Derek meant. Part of me didn't want to believe it. I'd kept that door sealed for so long it felt less like a door and more like a wall. Painted over, walked past, forgotten. But hearing that message cracked it again. Not wide, not open, but enough. 6 months later, life still looked the same on paper. Same warehouse shifts, same delivery apps, same beat-up Honda, same peanut butter toast every morning because Evan swore eggs made him gag. But inside, something had shifted. I didn't shrink anymore when someone mentioned my family. Didn't lower my eyes when neighbors remembered Patricia's voice louder than my own name. I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. Not at school, not on the phone, not anywhere. The shame was gone. And Evan, he changed too. His questions cut sharper. His shoulders set higher. He looked people in the eye, even adults, even the ones who didn't deserve it. When classmates got picked on, he spoke up. Sometimes it meant trouble, but he didn't care. And when I asked why, his answer was always the same. It's what Uncle Derek would have done. Like it was a rule now, like it was part of him. Last night, while we brushed our teeth, he asked, "Dad, are you still mad about that wedding?" I spat, wiped my mouth, caught his eyes in the mirror. No. Why? He shrugged. Because I think we won. You and me. I didn't answer, just nodded. Because he was right. We didn't beg. We didn't shout. We didn't stick around trying to fix what was already broken. We stood up, we walked out, and someone none of them expected, forced the whole room to see what they'd become. This morning, halfway through folding laundry, there was a knock at the door. Cartoons were blasting in the background. Evan was face down on the rug, juice box in hand, kicking his feet like it was any normal Saturday. I opened the door. Derek stood there. He looked different, lighter somehow, but serious, like a man who'd finally stopped dragging chains that weren't his. He didn't smile, didn't fidget. He just said, "He's here." I didn't need to ask who. A shadow stepped forward. Then a man filled the doorway. Gray beard, broad shoulders, heavy eyes that mirrored mine. Jeans, flannel, nothing fancy. But he didn't look small. If anything, he looked like life had aged him fast, but he still carried every word he'd never said. I hadn't seen him since I was 11. He opened his mouth, voice rough but steady. "I didn't walk away," he said. "I was pushed out, but I should have found a way back." I didn't reply. My jaw tightened, hands flexed at my sides. He didn't rush to explain himself, didn't try to fill the silence with excuses or stories. He just waited. So I stepped aside and let him in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one Evan and I used for math homework and grilled cheese dinners. My father didn't beg. He didn't list regrets or pretend he knew the man I had become. He just looked me in the eye and said, "You did better than I ever did. I'm proud of that." The words didn't come with some dramatic punch. No tears, no background music swelling in my head. They just landed. Quiet, heavy, real. Evan peeked around the corner, curious but cautious. I waved him over. "This is your grandpa," I said. "My dad." Evan walked in, juice box still in hand, eyes wide. My father bent slowly, braced one hand on his knee, and held the other out. Evan didn't hesitate. He shook his hand, then broke into a grin like he'd just met a superhero. No crying, no big embrace. But something shifted in that room. Something older than Derek's outburst at the wedding, deeper than Patricia's silence, cracked open. Something I didn't realize had been sealed inside me for so long. And in that moment, I knew whatever came next would be on our terms. No pretending. No playing along just to stay in someone else's version of family. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their love. I just needed to stop handing them the power to hurt me. And I did. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. And as always, thank you for watching.